Hello, everybody. It's 3:30, and this is going to be a tight presentation, so let's get this show on the road. Welcome to the Gunship Swadge, landing at a MAGFest near you. My name is Adam. I've been doing the Swadge for about 5 years now. The way this is going to be structured is going to be a bunch of mini talks. Everyone's going to get roughly 8 minutes on a bunch of different topics. Turns out development is very multifaceted, so you'll get to hear a lot about that. Just running down here, myself, we got Jay Vega, Mr. Troy, Eric, and I believe Greg at the end there. Yep, there we go.
I think so.
X-ray vision's working. So not necessarily the order we'll talk in, but everyone can do their own little intro when you start too. I'm going to start with my bit first because I went last year and got cut off, so no more of that nonsense. And we're going to start with the Swadge mode design principles, a report card. So you may ask yourself, what are the design principles or the design document? So over the years, we've learned what makes a good Swadge, what makes a bad Swadge, what makes things fun, what makes things infuriating. And we get that from feedback. So at the end of MAGFest, there's an email that goes out, and there's usually a survey link that says, hey, let us know what you think. And we actually read that. That's not going into a black hole. And we've collected all that information, and we try to apply it to what we do every year to make things a little bit better, incremental gains. If you want to scan the QR code, it'll bring you to the document. If you don't trust the QR code, you can type in that URL, which will also bring you to the document. And if you don't trust that URL, you InfoSec nut, that's fine. You're just not going to read it. Or you can, I'm going to move slides. You can always email circuitboards@magfest.org if you have any questions, and we'll answer them in time. All right, so let's just start running through a couple of these things. The game that I made this year was Magtroid Pocket. Some of you may have played it already, some of you maybe not. It's a first-person adventure shooter game in the style of something else. So one of our design principles, the first one is whether it fits the theme. And fitting the theme means using themed assets or fonts or colors or kind of following that ethos. And on this front, I gave myself an A+. Because the main character in the game is the one you see plastered all over MAGFest branding. It's using the colors and the fonts and basically everything. You couldn't be more on theme if you tried. I think this was the only A+ I gave myself, so it's all downhill from here. Another thing that we found out is that you really should use the hardware. So this Swadge has a lot of things on it, right? It's got screens and buttons and LEDs and buzzers and an accelerometer and microphone and a whole bunch of junk. And we found that if we put stuff on the Swadge and it doesn't get used, people kind of feel iffy about it. Or if there's a mode that only uses some buttons but not all the buttons, people are pressing things saying, oh, this should do something, and it's not, and it's frustrating, and that's bad. So I tried to use the hardware. And as you can see here, I got most of it, right? LED effects, check. Sound effects, yes, thank you to Joe, who's going to be here later. We used the touchpad, which was new for this year. I was very excited about that one. It does use all the buttons. I wish I actually had more buttons, but work with what you got. It uses the screen, duh. But it doesn't use everything. It doesn't use the accelerometer, it doesn't use the microphone input, and it doesn't use wireless connectivity. When I was doing these slides, I thought, well, there's some puzzles in the games, and I guess I could have been cheeky about shaking your Swadge to solve a puzzle or yelling objection or something like that. But I felt okay not doing that, so I gave myself an A. Now, I was happy with what I used, didn't use everything, but it fit the theme. Now, just as a quick show of hands, who here last year played the wireless fighter game with someone else? Okay. More than I expected, and maybe more than turned up in the survey. I didn't do wireless deathmatch this year because programming it was very hard and I had limited time. You'll see why later. But maybe next year I'll put a little more weight into that. Another principle we have is to polish the code. There should be no bugs. No one likes bugs. The game should look pretty, and it should have a pretty intuitive UI. And on this front, I gave myself an A, because there are no bugs that I'm aware of, but that doesn't mean there are no bugs. Anyone who's written software firmware will know that. And I think the UI is pretty intuitive, but I've been playing it nonstop for the better part of a year, so I have internalized a lot of it, and I don't know how new people will pick it up, so hopefully you find it intuitive, but not a guarantee there. So let me know how it is. You can tilt this from an A- to a B+. Another one of the principles we have is to keep it simple, silly. It turns out people like games when they know what they're doing, so guided tutorials are good. The first time we did this last year was for MF Paint, which Dylan wrote, which is a pretty complicated mode, and there was a tutorial to run people through how to use it, which was awesome, and I want to put that in everything. And the tutorials, you should be able to do it once, but then also revisit it if you forget what's going on and that sort of thing. And on this front, I gave myself a B. Because the dialogue in the game does tell you how to play the game. It's kind of like a built-in tutorial, but that doesn't mean people are going to read the dialogue. I hope they are. I wrote it, but you can only lead a horse to water. This year I also played a game called Persona 5, pretty recently actually, and they have a neat feature where after you read some dialogue, you can press pause and look at like the last couple paragraphs of things people said. Which is actually pretty neat, and I didn't think about that at the time, but that would have been really useful if someone like accidentally skipped through some dialogue in the game. So maybe next year we can do a little bit better there. We also want to keep it short. Silly. Each mode's game should be designed to have like 1 to 5 minutes of playtime, give or take. That doesn't mean you can finish the game in 5 minutes. You certainly can't with Magdroid Pocket, but it should be saved at roughly that increment so you can play it while you're waiting in a line for a panel or something of that sort. And on this front, I gave myself a C, but it's kind of a complicated C because Magdroid Pocket does save at that 1 to 5 minute interval. It actually will save every time you pick up a major item or warp between maps, but it doesn't do a good job of indicating that it's saving. So a lot of games will have like a little disk icon pop up in the corner whenever it saves. I neglected to do that because I just wasn't thinking about it at the time, and honestly, I didn't think about it until I was putting together these slides. It's like a semi-post-mortem. So I'm a little disappointed in myself there, but it does save. You can play it, pick it up, put it down at your own leisure. And the last principle we have here is to reward gameplay. There should be some sort of unlockable assets, whether that be a new skin or some art or a song or something, or a story that progresses, or levels that get harder, or just getting a high score. Some people love chasing that high score. And on this front, I gave myself an A, because there is a story, and it's the first time I've written a story since probably high school, which was an exciting experience. Hopefully you enjoyed. Hopefully it's not junk. I had it looked over by an English major, which got the thumbs up, so I was happy about that. Yeah, and that's the report card according to the design principles that we design against. And next up, we're going to have Troy sit in the hot seat and tell you about lumberjacks.
Thank you. This is Lumberjacks.
Lean into the mic.
Y'all can hear me in the back regardless, right?
Yep.
This is Lumberjacks, Panic and Attack, with your boy, Mr. Troy.
It also shows on the little screen over there.
He's not supposed to be in there. Get out of there! So, I'm going to talk a little bit about myself. I didn't grab my phone until I could time myself. But I've been making games for roughly 15 years or so. This was, I don't know why I'm talking about myself. This is not important. What we need to be talking about is the game. What we need to be talking about is the game. Lumberjacks, Panic and Attack. Panic and Attack. So it started a long time ago back when, nope, not that long ago. Back when I was in college. I made a game called Dragon Party. It was a game that was supposed to be multiplayer, and you jump back and forth and you attempt to not drown. And that's basically what I took and moved forward with the game. Like I said, I've made over 100 games in the past 15 years. You would think I'd finally get it right. The last game that I made for MAGFest was Donut Jump. It was based off of a few games that I had made in the past, and I looked at the hardware that we actually had to work with, and that's how I ended up with Donut Jump. Everyone loved it. That guy's not there again, is he? Back to Panic and Attack. Panic and Attack. So, I took the same ideas that I went with before. I found a classic game that I'm not going to actually mention. I took the Lumberjacks characters that I saw that MAGFest had, and I took the awesome new Swadge, and I made, y'all know we get, right? Lumberjacks, Panic and Attack. So, everyone here has already played it, right? There is a multiplayer mode that I am expecting us to all engage in. It was originally going to be a battle royale style, but that didn't work out, and I didn't want to force you all to be here in order to play the multiplayer mode that way. The character that you've seen popping up several times throughout my slides, he was supposed to be a secret character within the game, but unfortunately, that didn't make its way in. I was working on an actual rumble pack for the Swadge. I couldn't get it done in time, so that didn't get made. But there's 11 levels that you can play, and it varies in difficulty. One funny thing is, I've been spelling lumberjacks wrong the entire time I've been developing this game. I thought that it was 2 words, but it's only 1. Did I do it in time?
You're very much in time.
I told you I wanted to save time for everyone else.
There you go. The less time we talk, the more time for QA. Woo. All right. Eric makes the case.
Hi there, my name is Eric Jacobs. I helped prototype the original shell design. I have a background in electronics. Picked up 3D printing, prototyping over the last couple of years, and well, I liked the Swadge so much last year, I wanted to help make this one even cooler. So I can kind of summarize everything that I wound up doing into a couple of steps. Do I get the video on here?
By pressing next. Nope. Back.
I think it gives you a little icon, like if you hover over it. I think.
I cannot see that.
Question mark.
I just delete. No.
Is there a...
Rotate that left. There we go.
This is the action segment.
It's very quick preview.
I am panicked. There it goes.
Okay, so long story short, I wound up taking a 3D file of the circuit board, tracing it, offsetting those traces in all 3 dimensions, 3 axes, eventually winding up with the shape of the shell itself and the cutouts necessary for everything to fit properly. Scooped one out from the other, and well, here we are. Effectively, after that, I wound up passing it off to Greg, where he added all the art assets and made it look super awesome. But that pretty much sums up how I made this prototype.
Woo!
It took me about 3 hours and 3 different attempts each.
Is that me?
I believe so.
Fall off this thing.
Yeah.
I'm gonna hand this to you.
I see.
I guess I'll use a certain kind of stuff. Is this me?
Yep, you're all set up.
I have props.
Oh, my.
All right. Hello. Does that work? Hello. Okay. Yeah, hi. I'm Greg. I'm going to be like the random off-topic guy here because I am a very like weird sort of side member of all of this, which is to say I have no idea how they do any of the actual circuit board stuff, but like supporting it with assets is a fun thing for me because really Swadges are just kind of too cool.
Yeah, don't sell yourself short. Greg is critically important to this
No,
team,
no,
doing a
alright.
ton of art. We can make circus, but we don't make them look pretty.
Like 90% of all of the art that you see at this entire
All right. I'm just gonna go now. I can't have a higher note than that. All right. Okay. So I'm hoping this actually, yeah. Did a little bird person just fly? Okay, great. Excellent. We're good here. Okay, so yeah, the different sort of side assets to all of this. So the idea sort of first started design-wise that like this year's Swadge was going to be a ship. So you know you need sort of, I guess we're not really mentioning the IPs, are we? Certain game assets that are iconic and involve spaceships. The ship is a sort of feature all its own, like a character all its own. So the idea that the Swadge was going to be a ship was the starting point of this design idea. But you flip that when you start playing with it, and you think like, okay, so this the ship will also be a Swadge. Like the ship itself is just a giant Swadge that our main character flies around in. This is a fun sort of early, like, way too far draft of this that was like, okay, dial it back. Because there are other design goals that sort of came into this. So basically, this is, I think, the draft 3D model of like simple shapes that became the sort of starting point of some of the design that's printed on the Swadge board, and also what became the shell around it. So design goals for this. It should be a sort of classic gunship shape from that game property. It should be ergonomic too, because the idea that you're actually holding this thing and that it's not like stabbing you as you hold it is maybe a little more comfortable. And then the idea that it should seem like it would be well suited to the task of being a humanoid bird flying through space, which I hope to look at it. It feels like it would stand up to that requirement. So all of that distills down to what you see here. I'm hoping this is like showing the one up here, like the actual board. Okay, cool. So this is like what is actually printed on the Swadge as it lands across your desks here today. The idea, this is basically just the sort of silkscreen design that's actually printed on the board. It's just a detail pass, sort of trying to pull out the features of that 3D shape and put that in a sort of printed design on there. But also little things that come up along the way, like making sure that somebody can tell that circular shape is like a touchpad, so you try to emphasize that with the design a little bit. Like it's actually, the kind of thing that somebody might not know a lot about it when they get it, and you want to make sure that they're sort of aware of all the cool features that are like interactive on the board. So picking up from where Eric was talking, so Eric did like the hard part by a lot, which is this thing is supposed to be functional. It's a shell. This is the Swadge shell this year. And also the shell is like the coolest idea that I think it's like a recent idea, maybe like last year, is that? Yeah.
Yeah, last year was the first year we did that.
Yeah, and I'm not at all salty about the idea that I never got one last year, because they like were super sold out super quickly, which is awesome because that means that people really liked them. So
talk to me after this panel.
No, okay. See, live wheeling and dealing is happening here. This is behind the scenes stuff. But so Eric actually did the hard part, the functional part, which is that this is supposed to be a shell that makes it more comfortable to hold. It needs to fit well, and it needs to be something that's actually protecting this. So you get this really cool, perfectly functional design there, but then they come to me because I was modeling this sort of draft 3D thing that's like, well, can we actually carve some details pull some details out of it to make it look like a ship? And I'm like, cool, I don't do 3D print work, but that sounds fun. So I started to do a detailed pass on that, and I'm hoping these pull up here. The top part, you don't have a lot of room to work with, but you can start to kind of carve some things out of the side, maybe give it some little sort of grippies at the same time as making it look like little vents and all of that. But boy, the bottom of this thing is just like a playground, a big flat plane, go crazy. Well, this is what I did.
If I might add. That was meant for 3D printing. That's why I made that flat in the first place.
Yeah.
The prototype prints really great. When you start adding the details, you got to kind of flip it upside down, and then that breaks all of the 3D printing rules entirely.
Yeah, and breaks all the 3D printing rules entirely could be the summary statement of the design pass that I did. Oh man. All right, it's atmospheric in here.
Mood lighting.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. In space, no one can hear you. Yeah. I'm guessing the slide is really dark. Yeah. Okay. Well, I have a bright version of it in a second. Basically, picture a way too complicated 3D model here, and then me showing it to the people that know about 3D printing, and I think I got audible laughter. Yeah, maybe not. I'm hoping you can see it here on the left. This is me passing it through Blender and trying to put some lighting to make it look like translucent plastic. So that's what I sort of showed them as a maybe, and the idea was maybe too many details unless we injection mold it, which I don't know what that means, but it sounds expensive, and it sounds like it solves a problem that I made. So
just basically, you have a metal cavity and you shoot hot liquid plastic into it as hard as you can, and it solidifies into that shape. This is not printing one layer at a time, just one shot.
And I should say, like, I know what it means just enough to be really excited about it, but not to know what, like, the dollar value implication of that is. So, like, I'm just, like, in pure naive excitement there. I really want to also shout out Emily Anthony, who, like, just comes in and is like, yeah, I can make that work because I'm a genius. That wasn't her quote, but that's my summary of what happened there. So I'm calling that the YOLO design phase. Yeah. And I realized I never started the timer, I promised.
It's fine. I'm good. You're good.
Okay, so that's the shell. And then another weird thing happened, which is that I mentioned I love the Swadge. I mentioned that I loved sort of trying to support it with art assets. I was doing some of the pixel artwork with Adam's game Magtroid Pocket. And then I got like invited to start playtesting it, which meant playing it about 90 times and like writing down a bunch of notes and realizing that after you playtest a game enough, you've kind of started to like pull together some like things around it. So I started getting excited about it, taking breaks from other stuff I was working on, and like randomly decided to.
A little more light.
Yeah, it's crazy dark in
I
here.
know, this is like the campfire.
It's like a survival game. Swadge panel. Survival. Oh. Hello, everyone.
That's fine.
They're all still here. Yeah, so unsolicited fan art is how I'll summarize what happened next. But the thing is, I like stepped back from that and I was like, you know what this kind of reminds me of? And also I have like I think at the time like a 6-page document of like how to play this game. I was fondly remembering old players' guides, like the things I grew up with and loved, the Nintendo Powers. Oh, I brought props because of course I did. My old Nintendo Powers, like sitting there very happy. I went out and started like collecting players' guides and randomly found Metroid Prime Hunters, which is nice because it's sort of the handheld and felt appropriate for this. But the idea of like turning all of this into something that could actually be maybe a new sort of thing for our print work this year. We had this map that was all done in 3D. Over the course of working on some of the pixel art, we got to sort of turn some of these things into 3D models. So like the actual artifact that you collect in Adam's game had a 3D model. The teleporters got to be things that we threw into our VR chat portal world and all of that. So all of these like models and things happened. But way more importantly, we have really cool art and concept art. We have Katie Lawson and Alley Cat Cosplay here that did all of this beautiful like concept work. I wanted to kind of put side by side like their pixel work versus their like cool concept sketch work. And this is like one slide of a couple of these, but there were like whole folders full of cool stuff like this. And it's like, all right, well, let's show some of this off. So it started to be a weird thing where like, okay, we have this 3D map that is a 3D model for this year's event map. Like we could do a 3D model for Adam's game for those maps, and like pulling all of that together and starting to be like, well, what if it was a page spread and it was an old player's guide and you've got the map that shows you the new level, and then in the little sort of side spaces of like, I need to go to the next page before I have more content, you start showing the concept art and all of that. So that started to come together. I was trying to hype this to the people that needed to sort of say yes to this by like making a mock-up preview of it, like, hey, it would look like this. Wouldn't that be a cool thing to have? And then basically all of that pulls together here to be what you see. It's now a thing. It's down at the merch booth. This is just some sort of previews of some of the little features.
There's
like
one buried under there.
Oh yeah, yeah. Oh, live and in person, and I just knocked some things over. The actual 3D. Sorry about that. But yeah, this is just a little preview of what that looks like. And then all these art features there, you can see some of Katie's and Alley Cat Cosplay's work there. And then some of the models, some of the things like Dak did this postcard that was like a beautiful recreation of the cover of the game. All of these things that get like a little chance to sort of be a year in review. And then the idea, okay, let's make the Swadge showcase. So this is our introduction to one of my favorite new members of the Mag lore, a certain enthusiastic character called
Swadge Man!
Yes! If everybody could please give it up for Swadge Man. We don't know who Swadge Man is, but I'll say we've never seen Swadge Man and Jay Fry in the same place at the same time. So just some conspiracy theories for you there. So in the style of the sort of like Nestor's like guide in the old Nintendo Power, like we have Swadge Man as the sort of host of this section, and it's a showcase of all of the games and apps from the Swadge this year. So I will quickly get away from this microphone before I talk forever. Go get your player's guide and Swadge showcase and art book book today. Jump scare. Yeah, I didn't warn him to do that. Thank you, Swadge man.
I think that's another room.
Oh, okay.
All right, someone else's.
Yep.
Ready to go? All right.
Go.
All right, so I'm John Vega. I create Galactic Breakdown, and I'm going to focus less on the technical stuff and talk more about why I made this game. But let's start with some background. So last year, I created Super Swadge Land. It's a traditional 2D platformer. It's got 16 huge levels, very responsive controls, 3 enemy types that come in 3 color variations, and thus 3 difficulties. The game runs at 60 frames per second, and all this other stuff. That's a lot for one person, mostly one person, to create. But at the same time, something else was happening. A major life event was happening to me. My wife gave birth to a beautiful baby daughter. So when it came time to decide what game to make for this year, well, my free time was considerably different than it was last year. So that is the first factor into why I made a block-breaking type game. The next one is the touchpad. So the touchpad, there was one on the previous Swadge. It was a touch strip, so one axis, and I saw it worked really smoothly with the modes that did use it, and I thought this is super cool. So why not make a game that uses the next touchpad, which I think I heard idea that it might be circular, so 2-dimensional. And my wife suggested, well, why don't you make a breakout game? She's been suggesting this for a while. So I'm like, yeah, this is perfect, because breakout games, a lot of the appeal is in the control, how you have this one-to-one control over the paddle. Usually you have a knob to move the paddle, but the touchpad is a great alternative to that. All right, the third thing is this type of game can reuse a lot of the Swadge Land code. So for Swadge Land, I implemented the ECS design pattern without knowing that it was called that. In fact, I'm not sure I can really explain what it stands for. But basically, if you've seen videos about how Super Mario World and Mario 64 work underneath the hood, and there's this concept of sprite slots or object slots, you're kind of on the way there to understand what that is. But also, it makes it easy to add new object types and enemy types and define unique interactions between them and the tiles in the background. So all that's perfect for a Block Baker style game. Related to that is we can also reuse the level editor and file format that I created for Swadge Land. So previously we had used Sprite's tile map editor to create tile maps and then convert them into a binary format. I actually migrated that to tiled since there's no paywall, although Sprite's still a great tool and a must-have if you're designing tile sets, I'd say. But without the paywall, then we can more easily invite other people to make levels. Related to making levels, making lots of levels is easier for a breakout style game than a Swadge Land game, right? No, it's not. Making lots of levels is never easy. Shout outs to the wonderful people on the screen that contributed levels. I can't thank you enough for your help. Now, plus, balancing lots of levels is really hard. Some of the levels that contributed had to be moved to a super secret post game. If you play enough, you might find out how to access it. So, is that enough to justify making a Block Breaker game? Well, early on I created the first prototype, right? On the left is a mock-up all those things at the bottom are to figure out like how big the paddle should be and things like that. And just figure out the general screen layout on the right is what the actual early prototype looked like. So it worked. It controls great. It feels like a block breaker game, but it wasn't very unique. And I couldn't feel the passion that would drive me to finish making this game. So now for the big question that a lot of people have to contend with when they make games. Why would anybody play this derivative game instead of the more popular game it's derived from? So this question, it's demotivating to have to contend with, and may discourage people from making games at all. And everyone who makes games probably has to answer this question eventually. So one valid answer, in my opinion, and this isn't going to get your game published per se, but there aren't enough games like this in existence. And that is the idea behind Super Swadge Land. There's lots of 2D platformers, but I thought, like, well, why not make more? Because they're awesome. But another possible answer, mine is better. Huh? Are you crazy? This popular game that you're basing your game on is a classic. It was made by legendary people. It had a huge budget. But it's really not impossible to make a better game than insert popular game here. You gotta find the weaknesses and exploit them, just like any boss battle in a video game. Every game has a weakness, even insert popular game here. Yes, you may not exceed it in every aspect, but you'll create something unique and worthwhile and satisfying. So, because of block breaking games, they do have a few weaknesses. The controls on a console version, especially where you have a standard controller, are often difficult. You don't get that one-to-one feel where you feel like you are the paddle. Second one, the flat scoring system. Usually, blocks are scored at a flat value. When you finish the level, you have the same score that any other time that you finish the level, right? And scoring systems, for me in particular, they're pretty important, especially for a handheld game. But the big thing I noticed is most of the players' time is spent waiting for the ball to come back to the paddle. So for Galactic Brickdown, to address these weaknesses, well, the controls I already mentioned. We had the touchpad. It gives you that visceral one-to-one feel with the paddle. You know where to touch on the touchpad to move the paddle to that point on the screen. Not only that, it's a circular touchpad. There are two axes, so many levels feature paddles not just on the bottom of the screen, but on the sides. And you can control them all at the same time naturally and seamlessly. The scoring system I addressed by designing it so that it can encourage two play styles. There's a timer, a bonus timer, that makes it so that you can score lots of points just by going fast. Or you can be more strategic and build up a combo multiplier. It's a little too much to explain in the time I have. But to address the problem of most of the players' time being spent waiting for the ball to come back, well, we have the donut bombs. You can drop the donut bombs that will, they're just like the morph ball bombs. If you master the morph ball bomb infinite jump, this game is for you. You can use the bombs to deflect your ball in all sorts of angles. You can use it to save your ball from being dropped. And of course, you can use them to blow massive holes into the wall of blocks and complete levels faster. You will never look at breakout games the same way again after you play this. And I believe that's all I've got.
Right on time.
Okay. Nice.
It is in case.
Nice. Thank you. All right. Okay. Yeah. So hi everyone. My name is Joe Newman. Sometimes go by the handle Numa Joe, and I did the music for Magtroid Pocket, along with a couple of tunes for Galactic Brickdown. So a little background about me. I mean, I've been going to Mag for forever, and I perform. Catch me tonight with Ian Cowell at Jam Troid Fusion, along with Chris over there. Hey. With Ian Cowell and the Exceptional Goblins. So anyway, I play a lot of music, and I've actually known Adam for quite a while. We actually room together, but it never really occurred to us to collaborate until pretty recently. So last year was the first time I contributed to the 20th anniversary Swadge with the tune for the fighting game, Swadge Bros. And this year, Adam was like, well, do you want to do more? And I was like, yes, absolutely. Like, this is really fun. And what really sold it for me was that now, this year, we have 2 buzzers. So instead of just, monophony, now we have polyphony. But, of course, there are a lot of limitations to the Swadge hardware, and that is fun because it's fun to work around limitations. So, man, that's hard to see. Hold on, let's see if I can. There we go. So we have 2 buzzers, but only square waves, and no modulation, no volume, no pitch bend, and you also have to account for sound effects. So you can have one channel that's interrupted with sound effects, also did the sound effects, also square waves. And while there's technically some stereo, it's not really that audible. Like, you have to get really close to the Swadge in order to actually hear, any stereo effect. Not to say that we didn't try. There are a couple of spots in MagTroid where you can hear some sort of simulated echo in like station 0, because you have 2 tones playing on both speakers right after each other. It's actually a really cool effect. And then no time limit. We had reasonable, amount of. These are very, very small little MIDI files that get converted, but can't have like a 3-minute epic. What does this mean in practice? So one is melody is king. You have very, very few tools to work with. So priority is on memorable, catchy melodies, things that get stuck in your head. A lot of the early drafting for MagTroid was me just humming stuff into my phone if I came upon a melody that I thought was cool. Subtlety is for dorks. MagTroid is a friggin' awesome and expansive game with lots of different worlds, and each level has to tell a story and paint a particular picture. So you don't get to be subtle in how you arrange or compose things to fit that. So if I want scary, I'm going to use tritones. I don't know if there are any musicians in the audience, but tritones, it's known as the devil's interval. It's a augmented fourth. Wah, 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 wah. It's a scary interval, right? It's in every scary metal song. It's, we're going to use that, and we're going to use syncopation. We're going to use all the sort of musical tools in our toolbox. I'll go into this in a bit. The other thing is that MagTroid is very much a parody, love letter to existing games, right? And references evoking the spirit of Metroid, but as well as other sort of classic retro games. The hope was, even if you don't necessarily pick out every reference, it still feels somehow familiar to somebody who grew up playing Nintendo games. And that's really fun. And then lastly, the exploration loop as a compositional theme. Now this is getting into the music theory weeds, but when you're doing looping music, a lot of like early NES soundtracks do this, is they kind of, here's the melody, and then it goes somewhere, and then it brings it back, right? Because it has to loop. And for Metroid in particular, there's something kind of metaphor thematic about, you're exploring and then you're backtracking, and then you're going and you're seeing something new. But that sort of push and pull, a lot of the songs, state a melody, go somewhere, and then come up with kind of creative ways to bring it back to where we started. Again, it's not an idea that I came up with, but it was one that sort of guided my thinking when I was creating these songs. So, do you see the whole thing? Yep. Yeah. Okay. So this is, like I said, subtlety is for dorks. So for each song, we knew what the level was going to be. So Station 0 was a tutorial. We want to establish it's a sci-fi mystery kind of vibe. Vine Grasp, this is sort of our first, real level where we want to get people pumped to play the adventure. So what are the musical tools that sort of establish that? So for Station 0, there's a lot of open space. That's where we got that echo, which is kind of sci-fi-y, and it's kind of a reference to the intro screen of Metroid on NES. Atonality, so this is like very much out of time. Bleeps and bloops, very much trying to evoke computers, which is easy when you have square waves, but again, trying to think about that, not necessarily musical because it's just the opening tutorial. Vine Grasp, that's our first sort of catchy earworm tune. We want to have a cool bass line. It's kind of vaguely modeled off of Metroid Prime's Chozo Ruins, that like sort of percussive thing, turned it into a bass line, and then building off of that. So we have this, heroic progression. It's catchy. It gets stuck in your head, hopefully. And again, sets the tone that this is going to be an adventure that's also kind of fun and cool, as opposed to just sci-fi. You go to Florus. It's lava level. It's hard. This is like totally, ripping off of Norfair from Metroid. Bomb, 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 very, very. I was afraid that this was a little too on the nose, but yes, tritones, this sort of chanting. This funny story. This came from. This was another melody that I came up with in the car when I was trying to make sure that my 1-year-old didn't fall asleep. So we were going, "Don't go to sleep, don't go to sleep." So next time you play it, you can appreciate that. Yeah, coming up with lyrics is a good way to compose. All right, Station 1, same as Station 0, but now it's a little spookier. Now it's a little bit more tritony. It's harder. Again, we were reusing worlds, so we were reusing theme. Mosspire, this is our water level. What's the water level in Super Metroid? What? Meridia. Thank you. And that has this sort of more open feel, odd time signatures, open fourths, sort of some jazz vocabulary. Again, to me, that's somehow I associate that with water levels. They're little droplets. Again, maybe this doesn't make sense, and this is only how I think about things, but I was not trying to be subtle at all. I was thinking water level, we're going to do droplets. Scaldaria, Florus, but harder. It's literally the same song, but it's a variation on it, faster. The Florus is sort of it's in a 4/4, but with lots of triplets. Scaldaria just goes all the way and makes it a 6/8. So it's all this sort of like Muse-esque, gallopy thing. And then finally the boss theme, which at this point, this is only like a 30-second loop, but we want the oh shit moment of, oh wow, there's a boss in this game. So all bass line, I want someone to cover it with like a metal soundtrack, because that'd be fun. And chromaticism, Phrygian. Again, these are a lot of musical terms. I don't know if there are any musicians in the audience, but these are the tools that our minds subconsciously associate with certain vibes and feelings. So using them was really fun. Finally, I'm gonna. How much time do we have? Zero? Okay. Well, here's the credits theme. I'm just gonna play it, and you will see as we go through it. This is just full of references to stuff. Can we play it?
Oh.
No. Okay. Okay. Well, that's all right.
We'll circle back to it.
So here's the DuckTales moon theme. Then we have this rhythmic motif that's going to come through. Again, it's easier if you play the song, but whatever. This is Pollyanna. There's a reference to Mother in there. Added the progression from Les Mis. It's Eponine's song. Why not? It sounded good. Some tasty tension, which... and a sort of Final Fantasy style suspended fourth. So we repeat it back, we do it again, and then the second time we resolve that tension. Then Link's Awakening, because it's my favorite mobile game of all time. It's very on the nose. And then we restate the main theme in relative minor, which is my favorite thing to do because it is like a good composing flex. And then finally we end this with this coda, which I added at the last minute. I was like, okay, we have to add this additional coda because I want more Link's Awakening in this soundtrack. And which is like, done, we're done. And that's it. And that's the music.
All right, so looking at the clock, we got through all that in exactly 45 minutes. Go us, which means we have 15 minutes for Q&A. I bet some of you have some questions. Thank you for not blurting them out in the middle of the presentation. I didn't mention that earlier. But now is the time that if there's any burning questions you have, we got a hand over here. Yes, you?
This is a really cool project. How can someone get involved with it?
How can someone get involved in it? Can you, actually, sorry. We're going to come back to that because there's actually a note about the credits. Can I get the next slide? I forgot about this. So if anyone actually looked at the credits, at the very end, there's this little bit that says, for the littlest one, she's coming. And about a week after the firmware froze, she arrived. So that's my daughter, Aurelia.
We're a bunch of dads.
Sorry to steal your thunder there, but it's dad power. And we're teaching her real good. You can see the next slide. She's playing a little bit of God of War with me and a little bit of Portal, so starting her off with the classics. Okay, next slide.
Okay.
Q&A, next slide. Perfect. How do you get in contact with us? How do you work with us? Circuitboards@magfest.org. Send an email, say, I want to do something. Write a game, contribute art, contribute music, play test things, 3D printing, modeling. There's a lot of stuff that you heard here today. You may have some skill that fits in somewhere. You may not have any skills but want to help out anyway, and send us an email. We'll try to see what we can do. Also, if you have any questions for us in particular, there's a couple of Discord handles there. You can ask us in the MAGFest Discord, or I guess DM if you want to slide there. So that's how you can join us and help us out and expand our family in a non-genetic way.
Or if you want music for your game.
Yeah. Also, for asking a question, you get a little Swadge add-on. Do you want to come up here and grab it, or do you want me to throw it at your face? Woo! So you'll also notice this year, there's a little 6-pin header on your Swadge, if you have one already, and you can plug this in and make it a little bit classier. So, knowing that, who else has questions? Oh! Whoa. We're going to need to,
I already have one.
you form a line here, holy moly.
How are you feeling today, Adam?
Geez, I don't even know where to start. We'll start over there.
Do you have any plans for next year yet?
We do not have any plans for the Swadge next year. Personally, I'm actually moving to Senegal next year, which is on the westernmost tip of Africa. So my contributions to the project are going to change somehow. Haven't figured out exactly how. I'm not disappearing, but I'm probably going to be pumping the brakes a bit. But we usually figure out that stuff closer to like April, May. It'll start to ramp back up. We kind of hibernate for a bit. All right. Oh, and yes, after you ask a question, you can come up and grab one of these. I have a limited number. We'll see how many we can do. Also in that corner, the totally normal-looking man with the mustache and the neon hat.
Yeah, did you guys do anything special to promote the Swadge this year, like on Mac TV or something?
I don't know. Did we do anything on Mac TV? Yeah, I think we did. I think we had Swadge Man come by.
Swadge Man.
And make us an advertisement. And that's actually another thing that if you enjoy doing in terms of like visual arts or videos or whatever, like we need people who do advertising because it turns out that people may not get the Swadge if people don't know it exists. All right, questions. We'll go to the other side of the room. I see some fox ears.
Okay, so I just realized at the beginning of the panel that I actually put the lanyard on upside down.
Uh-huh.
Screw holes, but I actually really like it because then you can like just, keep it on the lanyard and play without it getting in the way.
Sure.
So just some feedback for next year. I like it upside down.
All right, we got feedback that she likes it upside down. Put the lanyard holes on the other part. Cool. Let's go center middle wearing a mask. Are there any kind of secret codes this year? Sure, there are secret codes this year. Next question. No. For everyone who's here, you can Konami code on the menu to get some debug stuff. That's one. And in Magtroid Pocket, there's a little secret dialogue at the end if you have either a high percent or a low percent run in true Metroid fashion.
I'll add this.
Oh.
Beat Galactic Brickdown, you'll get a secret code for that game as well.
Oh,
There are 50 levels.
there you go.
Oh, wait. And play all the games on the Swadge.
Yep, just play all the games.
No, that's actually a secret.
Yeah.
It unlocks stuff.
Okay, we'll sweep across the room. I see a beard over there.
Hi, I'm curious, like, could you talk about, like, the development process a bit? I don't know if that's, like, a huge part.
So you want to talk about the development process, like any particular aspect of it, like the firmware, hardware, like conceptual?
I guess on my mind is, like, how close to the hardware did you have to, like, program?
Okay, so how close to the hardware do we have to program this? Personally, I'm living in the hardware. So I wrote like a lot of system level APIs for graphics and music and all that other stuff. Everyone else who's writing firmware doesn't really have to get that close to the metal. There'll be draw functions like draw line or draw pixel or draw shape that they already have, or draw sprite used a lot, play music. But the pipeline for like taking a MIDI file, converting it, packing it into binary format, flashing it onto the hardware, like that's all taken care of by me for everyone else.
And special shout out also to Chris there in the audience for not only doing some of the music he did the music for Lumberjacks, but also
That guy.
Yeah, man.
Shout out Chris.
Also helping with debugging the binary conversion for the music, which was the huge last minute panic thing.
Yeah, that's a different. Oh yes, also the code is available if you want to check it out. I think at the back of the Swadge it's got a URL. The URL you can follow to our GitHub page, and you can download and remix and do whatever you want with it. All right, let's go over there.
I heard there was interactions with the VR chat portal with the Swadges.
Yes, there are interactions with the VR chat portal with the Swadges. Unfortunately, the guy who wrote that up is not here because of COVID. Boo. But if I remember, it's pretty similar to last year's, where you get to fly around and shoot people with things. So check it out. There's also a firmware update if you go to the VR portal specifically for VR.
Yep. Yeah, come by the
there was
portal, and we have a flashing station there to be able to do the updates that will interact with the other shooting game that we're doing in the VR chat portal.
Yeah,
this year.
little oopsie there.
And shout out to Charles Lohr, who is the author of all of that. Yeah.
Who is resting and recovering. All right, you've had your hand up the whole time, Bryce. Is there anything you can do in Makerspace in relation to the Swadges? Why, yes, there is. So these little add-ons that I'm giving out now for questions, I guess you want yours now, sure. Yeah, you earned it. You can actually go make your own, not this particular one, it's a different one, but you can make your own at Makerspace. And if you don't know how to solder, you can learn how to solder. Oh, and I got a little one in return. This is a trade. Look at that. Oh, it's adorable. It's Cho, the tiniest little, it's even smaller than mine. There we go, baby size one.
Don't let her eat
it. Do not eat. Cool. All right, Hunter, since you've also had your hand up the whole time.
What are some of the top features that you weren't able to get to and weren't able to implement?
Oh, the top features we weren't able to implement. Well, last year we had Picross, which was a really popular game. Everyone loved it. And the developer was some sort of legend, I hear.
I don't love that guy at all.
And I think there was going to be some sort of block pushing puzzle in the style of Sokoban this year. There may have been like an early prototype for it, and then Unity imploded. And someone's time evaporated, so we didn't get it. But maybe next year. There's always next year. All right, yes.
How much debate and/or argument occurs in the picking of the theme and the picking of the design?
All right, how much debate or argument in the picking of the theme or design? The theme is actually not picked by this team. There's a separate group of MAGFesters who get to pick the theme, and then ultimately that guy with the hat over there makes a call. Yeah, hide your face.
No, awesome
But-
theme.
Oh, great theme. We love it.
Yeah.
Once the Swadge team gets the theme, there's a fair amount of back and forth about, what should it be. We looked at something more like a screw attack design, but that violated the don't stab people principle. We looked at something more like a morph ball, but it turns out a circle is a boring shape. Don't tell that to Pokeballs. And we eventually settled on the ship, but there was a fair amount of, friendly back and forth. We're not at each other's throats or anything. Other jacket connoisseur.
What kind of hardware features did you want to see or would like to see on the Swadge?
Okay.
I know for me personally, I wouldn't mind like triggers on the back.
Sure. So, what hardware features would we want to see on the Swadge in future years? Triggers on the back would be really cool. Figuring out a way to do that ergonomically without any sort of mandatory plastic shell would be quite hard. I've always wanted to do like dials or knobs or other input, but one of the things in our design principles is that you want the Swadge to be pretty flat because people are wearing it around their neck and you don't want it to catch on clothes and you don't want it to get damaged at certain points. So that kind of limits what we can use to things that are very flat, which is why the touchpad was great because you can't get flatter than literally nothing there. But if we can figure out a way to make taller components work in a safe and non-breaking way, that's something that I'd like to do.
I would love to continue to upgrade the sound capabilities. Like, even if some of it is hardware based, like getting support for like expression and mod wheel support and pitch bend and, or if we could do like a full on percussion channel, like if we get a third channel in there, then we could actually get some like real deal like some. I mean, I think we did some really cool stuff with just 2 square waves, but like I think I'm really psyched about, with all of the talent in MAGFest, like getting some more actual, musicians and composers involved in making stuff for it. I think that would be really neat.
All right. Yes, you.
How long was production time from start to finish this year?
Oh, start to finish production time. I think I started in like May, maybe doing some of that system level stuff. I feel like production didn't really get like really going until July, August for a lot of like the games and stuff, and then I don't know, whatever that is, until December 6th, I believe, was our firmware freeze, and then hardware was due earlier than that because it had to go to the factory. So most of the year, but not all of the year, we do get a little bit of break.
For the record, I started mine 20 plus years ago.
That's right. Evangelion shirt.
So, since the Swadge is now starting having screens, how much code is transferred over year to year, or has it just been a blank slate every year?
So this is how much code has been transferred year to year. Even older Swadges had code going forward. We usually build on what we had last year. This year, most of it came from last year. We didn't change the underlying system. We didn't change a lot of the underlying hardware. We did move from the integrated development firm ESP's IDF 5.0 to 5.1, which turns out was a headache of a migration. Don't recommend doing that. But outside of that migration, a lot of the underlying code was the same. Let's go with C. It's all C all the time.
Unfortunately.
No, fortunately, we like C. I see a glove way in the back.
Last year's Swadge, the cave file was available in a 3D file online. People can kind of print their own and modify it a little bit. Is that the plan to release a new file?
Yes. So is the 3D model available for this year's Swadge cell? And the answer is yes. Again, if you follow the URL on the back of the Swadge to the GitHub page, the hardware repo has all the shell files in it. It's going to be hard for you to injection mold it unless you have an injection molding machine, but they are 3D printable with different levels of detail.
I wanted to add to that. I've also uploaded the prototype shell, which is much easier to 3D print. It's the raw STL file, and you can do a lot of cool stuff in the slicer program with it, such as exposed infill to give it your own personal flair. That's what I've done on this one, but it's totally up to you how you want to go about that. Like you were saying, the full model is up there as well. Is a little bit more difficult to work with. You do have to print it upside down. I already oriented it that way before it was uploaded. So really, all you should have to do is play around with the slicer settings. Just be aware if you go to do it, supports. You're gonna want supports around the thin edges. Find a way to slow it down, however you do it.
All right. Question from the Gundam.
What time frame does playtesting take place in? For what time of year and how long does it
sorry, what time frame does what take place?
Playtesting.
Oh, playtesting. Playtesting takes place as early as it can. So when your game is ready to be shown to another human being and you're comfortable with that, that's when playtesting begins. So I don't think mine started until I had like one level like actually done. I probably could have shared something earlier, but opted not to, just personal preference. Yes. Yes, yeah.
Have you ever tried putting a plastic D-pad over the micro switches for the D-pad, and is that particularly challenging because there's no front panel?
So have we tried using a plastic D-pad over the switches, and how challenging would that be? We have not tried that.
I was experimenting with a 3D model for that. I don't know if I could pull off. I definitely couldn't pull it off for this year. But if I'm involved with next year's and the hardware is more or less the same, I'll see what I can pull off.
Yep. I think honestly the hardest part may be budgetary. We don't have the budget to do plastic for every Swadge, which is why the shells are an add-on. They don't come with a Swadge. If we ever get blessed with I don't know, $20,000 or something like that, and we can do plastic for everybody, then we'll do a little D-pad insert. Mask.
So, looking for the history of Swadge,
That's going to be the last question, by the way.
which Swadge was the biggest challenge, and which Swadge would you call the greatest triumph of the Swadge?
Oh, which Swadge was the biggest challenge, which Swadge was the biggest triumph? I would say last year's was probably the biggest challenge because we migrated from an ESP8266 to a 32, went from a monocolor screen to a color screen, and had to do a lot of the low-level stuff built up. So that was quite challenging to do in a one-year time span. The biggest triumph would probably be the first Swadge I worked on, the reflector Swadge, and that's the hexagon Swadge that everyone absolutely loves because it's bright. And yeah, he's wearing it right now. See, no matter, it doesn't have a screen, it doesn't really have games, it's just a light thing, but everyone loves it, so that's probably the biggest triumph. And I saw the card in the back that says wrap it up, so that's our panel this year. Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you all.
Give it up for Adam!